Welcome back to Elder Gal. Today we're going to talk about money. Do you have a dysfunctional relationship with money? Does it always seem to slip through your fingers? Do you never have enough of it? If so, we're in a similar boat. At least I've been in that boat most of my adult life. So I'm going to talk today about the things you probably don't want to do, or you're going to end up poor like me. And I say poor like me even now that I have a YouTube channel that's monetized. Technically, what I'm earning so far, I'm still technically very poor. I mean, maybe someday YouTube will make me very comfortable, but right now it's just the basics. And it's fine because it's more than I had before. I was really poor before. Now I'm just poor. So it's still better than it was. So we're going to talk today about don't do these things. These are the things that if you do them, you're going to end up like I did. Now, if you already have done many of these things, then it's never too late to change. I've changed the way I deal with my money now. I've changed it over the last several years gradually. And so I don't deal with it the way I used to. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be able to make this video in good conscience, because if I hadn't learned anything, what am I talking about? So I have learned, and I have learned what works. So let's explore that a bit today. Now, if you have not watched my channel before, especially my videos about money, please go back and watch a couple of them. I'm not going to go into all the detail that I have in other videos about this, but I basically have had a dysfunctional relationship with money most of my adult life. Most of my adult life. I was never taught anything about money or how to handle money. I grew up very comfortable, really upper middle class, really. I never wanted for anything I really, wanted, or definitely anything I needed, I basically got. So I had no idea what money, or the lack of money, what that was about, but I also didn't really understand money. And I've talked about this in another video where I think it's really up to parents to really educate their children about this as the kids are growing up. I think it's a very important part. They certainly don't learn it in school. Kids don't learn this in school. I wish they did. And I wish we had courses in financial management and how to deal with your money and, how to save and all these things. But we didn't get it. I know I didn't. I don't think the kids today get it. So the thing is, we have to learn for ourselves, often the hard way. Now, some people were taught about money and they actually developed really good money skills and they haven't had a problem with it. Kudos to them. I wish I had been one of them. But unfortunately, I was not. So my first problem that I ran into with money, well, I never really made a lot of money. That was another big issue. But my first big problem was that I used to spend whatever I got. So if I got a paycheck and it was $300, I'm talking about like, years ago in the 70s, I got a paycheck was $300. That $300 was gone in a day or two. Between paying things I had to pay and spending, I basically never had any extra money. And that bad habit continued through my 30s and into my 40s. And I never really learned to save or learn to how to really manage money and make it work for you. And of course, if you've watched others of my videos, you know that then by my late 40s, around 50, I got into problem gambling. And then that decimated whatever kind of financial. I actually was earning more at that time, but I was also losing a lot of it. I mean, I paid my basic bills, but other than that, I basically had nothing to show for it. And it's one of the biggest regrets of my life, and I've moved past that now. I have not been in trouble gambling now for probably 6-7 years at least. So that's no longer a big issue. But when I moved to the place I live now, which was about 6 years ago, I really vowed to always have money in my wallet left over. The whole goal was to have money left over at the end of the month. So that was kind of the first thing I did to really make things better. Now, I'm still a work in progress. It's still challenging for me. Now that I am making extra income, I also have to, it makes life more complicated because now I have to pay my taxes. Now it's going to change my living situation. There's a lot of other complications that come now because I have a bit more money, which is another thing that no one ever taught me about. So I'm self-taught in this respect, basically. So I'm going to talk about what are the things you don't want to do, or you're going to end up poor or stay poor or whatever. So that means these are the things you want to overcome and turn around. And I learned these the hard way. I'm trying to share it with you now, so maybe some of you don't have to learn it the hard way, because I can tell you that financial dysfunction is one of the greatest tragedies of my life. That and my estrangement issues are the two things that have caused me the most distress. So I really encourage you to, if you have any money issues, work on them. Definitely work on them. Because you know what? It's never too late. I wanted to get a handle on this for a long time, but it took me a while because I didn't have any kind of social support. I didn't really have anyone that was really showing me the right way at the time that I was going through it. Because remember, I really didn't have family around. And that had been for many, many years, long before I was gambling. And so the thing is that I didn't really have anybody that really helped me through it. I had to get through it on my own. So these are the things that I'm going to share with you, and in no particular order. I wouldn't say any is more important than the other. I think they're all really important to developing a good way of dealing with money. So remember, these are the things that if you don't do them, if you fail to do them, you're going to be in trouble. So the first one is living within your means. It means don't spend what you don't have. So if you have $1,500 coming in every month, and that's net, then you can't spend more than $1,500. I remember there was a show on one of the cable networks years ago on people that had climbed out of debt or wanted to climb out of debt, and they had a financial counselor that would come talk to them. And it was amazing to me that these people had expenses that were, $1,000 more than their income was every month. And I was thinking, well, I don't even know how they're logically doing that, except if they're just using credit cards. I don't know how they're managing that. So the first thing is you have to live not just within your means, ideally below your means. So, because if you don't do it, you will end up poor, like me. The next thing is you have to have a budget. You have to have a budget. I write my budget down. I actually do it about 6 months in advance. And so I know exactly what I have to spend for, even food. I basically average the amount I'm going to need for food. I do that, and I have done that for years. I do that every month. I've known people that do not make a budget, and guess what? They don't they run out of money, and they're like, "Oh, I guess I thought I had more money than this." Well, if you'd had it written down, you would know exactly how much money you have. I actually know to the penny, basically, how much money I have as far as cash left over at the end, or in the middle of a month, at the end of the month, whatever. Always have a budget and stick to your budget as much as possible. Now, of course, there are emergency situations, things like that can affect that. But overall, stick to your budget. Believe it or not, even in the days I was gambling, I had a budget. And then I would blow the budget because I would have lost money, and then I'd had to recalculate the budget. It was horrible. I couldn't believe I put myself through that. I actually always wrote stuff down, like what I had to pay or whatever, and then I ended up always like having some sort of disaster. So yeah, it was living on the edge for sure. Not recommended. Another important point is set aside an emergency fund. Now, I know that ideally they tell you, especially if you're still working, to set aside an emergency fund of at least 3 months, maybe 6 months of living expenses. If you're retired, And a lot of people that watch this channel are retired or not working full time. So if you're retired, I don't think you need 3 to 6 months set aside, but you do need at least probably 1 month. So if you bring in $1,500 a month, I would probably say you need at least $1,500 saved for an emergency of some kind, even if it's just to pay your bills for the next month. Ideally, you want more than that, but I would say, let's be real about it. It is really hard to set aside emergency funds if you're on a low income. It just is. So I would say at least $1,500 if you're bringing in about, if that's your income. Now, I will share with you, like, if you've watched a video that I did about living on the road in a van at one time, this was a little over 6 years ago. I lived on the road for a year. And thank God that the van I was driving never broke down. Because one of the things they tell you, and I never did it because I didn't have the money to do that, was set aside probably at least $5,000. If you're driving a vehicle and you're doing a lot of road trips, or you're living out of your vehicle and you're on the road, you got to have at least $5,000 emergency fund. Because what if you need a new transmission? Or what if you need a new engine? Or what if you need major repairs for the vehicle? At least if you had $5,000, you're going to cover at least one of those major expenses. And it may be critical to you still being able to live out on the road. So if you're relying on a vehicle for either going to work or traveling or whatever, you got to have a bigger emergency fund. I would say that. The next thing is just save 10% of your income every month. And you can put that initially into an emergency fund and then just in savings or some other type of thing. But until you have enough money, I wouldn't recommend investing that at that point when you're dealing such a low amount. You have to have liquid savings that you can, use in an emergency. So 10% out of your money off the top. I'm still working on this one. This one is really hard for me. I always have some money saved, a little bit, but I don't have quite what I'd like for an emergency fund, and I also don't always save 10%. Now that I have more income coming in, I'm hoping to do that. But if you fail to do this, like I've said, if you fail to do these other things, you will end up or stay poor like me. Now, the next thing should be a no-brainer, as I just gave you a cautionary tale about it. Don't overspend. And don't gamble. So don't buy everything in sight. And also, don't gamble. I cannot say that enough. Don't gamble. It's one of the worst decisions. I don't even think I would call it a decision. It was the worst insanity I've ever gone through. And like I said, I came out the other side, bloodied and poor, but I still fortunately came out the other side. So not everyone does. And it is really important to see clarity about that. We have a woman that lives in my apartment community that she is known for going to we have a very tiny casino in my town, and she's known for going to the casino all the time. And I can see the look on her face. Sometimes I'll get on the bus and I'm going down to the store and she's going to the casino because we tell the driver where we're going, kind of thing. And the look on her face, I recognize that look. I used to have that look when I used to go to the casino. It's the look of somebody who is trapped in the web of gambling. And I feel so sorry for her because I know she's out of her mind with it. Like every bit of extra money, she just goes and does. And if she wins, she just gives it right back because that's basically what you do. It's a horrible, vicious cycle. And I feel for her, and I really don't know. I get the feeling she's so deep in it that I don't think she'd listen to anybody saying something to her about it. And I don't know her well enough to feel like I can butt in anyway. But I do know the look on her face. I know the look. I know what that's like. It's like you're in a horrible altered state, basically. And so anyway, don't do those things. If you do those things, you're never going to be okay. If you're spending everything you bring in, or if you're gambling, you will never be okay. And I wish somebody had been able to say that to me in those days. But, I didn't let anybody in. I didn't tell a lot of people what I did. So how could I have expected somebody to really, do an intervention or whatever for me? So I basically had to crawl out of that hole myself, which was hard. Now, the last thing I'm going to say is that this one I don't think everybody is capable of doing. So this is just a bonus thing. I would say if you don't want to end up poor like me, okay, keep living at your full amount of income. So remember, the first thing I said was live at your means, or at least not above your means, or live below your means. Well, this one is really below your means. Ideally, if you had enough income coming in, which I know I don't even have enough coming in for this, but if you have enough coming in, you should be living on half of your income. You should be living on half of your income. So if you're bringing in $1,500 a month, you should be able to live on $750. Now, I know you're going to laugh because I'm laughing. It's not funny. You can't do that. Okay, unless you're getting free rent somewhere. Nobody's going to be able to live on that little. So this is only for people that have more money than this. So if you have $4,000 a month income, then living on $2,000 would not be out of the realm of possibility. But I see what the point of this is. I've read this in many financial, books about this. It is really important to live on only half your income, because that way you can effortlessly save an emergency fund, save enough to invest. You can do all sorts of things then with that money. And you never have to worry about an unexpected expense. But again, if you're living on Social Security, if you're living on a small pension, if you're even like me and getting a small YouTube money in addition to my tiny Social Security, you don't have a lot. And there's no way right now that I can even live on half. So I'm just saying that to people that have more money than that. If you have more of an income than that, live on half of what you bring in every month, whether it's you're on Social Security or a pension, or you're still working and you've got, a salary, whatever it is, try to live on half. But that's only if you have enough money. Because I can just hear the groans out there where you're going, well, I don't think I could do that. No, I know. If you're only living on $1,000 to $2,000 a month, you're not going to be able to do that. Unless, like I said, you had free rent somewhere. Maybe then you could. But anyway, that's the deal on this. So if you fail to do these things, you could end up poor, like me. This is like some sort of a drinking game where, no, I'm not encouraging you to drink. Do not drink. But it's like a drinking game that every time I say poor like me, you take a shot. But anyway, do not do that. So I hope this helps. It's not anything you've probably never heard before, but I stress it from the viewpoint of somebody who has learned this for herself, who has learned what is helpful and what is not helpful. You do these things, everything but the last thing that I mentioned. If you do those things, you will be in better shape financially just within a few months. You will be in a better shape financially just within a few months. So I encourage you to work on that if you need to work on that. I know that I pretty much, like I said, I turned things around 6 or 7 years ago, and I had a little bump in the road because I got into a little too much credit card debt. Now you notice I never said don't use a credit card, because first of all, I'm not a hypocrite, because I still, even though now I'm paying down most of my cards, I still think sometimes it's okay to use a card. But you have to be disciplined enough to always, only use it if you really need to use it. Only use it for something maybe you need to have. It's an emergency. You've got to have it in the moment. Wait, only use this for things that are very important. But I'm never going to tell people not at all to use them, because first of all, I think that's very unreasonable. Again, if you have a lot of money, you probably don't have to use a credit card unless you like travel or something like that. There are times when having a credit card is very useful, like when you're going on a trip or something like that. But other than that, on daily stuff, you shouldn't be using them. So that's my tips for the day. I hope you can get a hold of your finances like I did about 6 or 7 years ago. Uh, and, I can tell you another thing that I know just from long experience. There are times I did have more money coming in, but when I didn't know how to manage it, I wasn't any better off. Studies have shown that when people get a large bump to their income and all of a sudden have maybe earning double or whatever, that they just spend more. That is the trend. So avoid that. If you do have more money coming in, and eventually I hope I will have more money coming in. We'll see. But the point is, when you do get a large bump to your income, don't spend more. Still spend at the same level. And then you will have extra money. And that extra money is really important because you never know when you're going to have a medical emergency that's not covered, or dental emergency, which I'm very familiar with, and or car. If you have a car emergency, you're going to need that money for unexpected things that do need to get paid for, because otherwise you're in physical distress, or you can't drive your car or something like that. So anyway, I hope you take these to heart today. Until next time, be well, be kind, keep moving forward, and take care. Bye.